Hey guys, today I was working with a guy who just kind of out of the blue. He's my age, but in his early 40s he had a drug problem. He never really did drugs before that, but he got hooked on drugs, and his world fell apart as it does when you are doing drugs in your 40s. And so he probably lost his job, of course, and his wife, and he left his son with his wife, probably, who probably was maybe having issues of her own, so maybe that wasn't real good. But he felt really bad about having abandoned his son at 10 or 11 years old. And here, I don't hardly know him that well, but we're working together, and he says, and he's telling me this. Now, we both knew that he had had a drug problem, and he probably wanted to talk about that, but here we go talking about his, you know, talking to his counselor still today about this issue, and it's still sort of in the back of his mind and causing some difficulties. I said, of course, well, you got to forgive yourself for that kind of stuff. And he was right away like, yeah, I've been down there. I've got, he danced with all that, and so anywhere I kind of put it in different terms, he had it figured out. And he figured it out as, I'm not going to forgive myself, but I'm okay with it. I've come to grips with it. I've moved on. All these good things. And I'm like, well, you can't really deal with the word forgive. Like, okay, once you tell me you've forgiven yourself, we're all good. Because I don't really even know, it's just a word that points to an emotion. And let's talk about the emotion of forgiveness is really deep. And there's a lot going on with that. So I'm thinking to myself, what do I say to this guy? And some of the things that came to mind are that, in his 40s, he probably already had a pattern of difficult things that had happened that he's learned to bury. And you just keep burying them, and they're gonna bubble up. And when they're bubbling up in your subconscious, it's not a happy place to be in your head. And if your head's not happy, nothing's doing well, and physically you start to be in bad shape, all your relationships go to hell because everybody's sensing your unhappiness in your head. It's coming out in all kinds of ways, the old cliche of show up and, kick the dog and tell your wife to get you a beer while you sit in front of the TV or something. Those are early signs, I guess you'd say. So this guy in his early 40s gets into drugs, and everything spirals apart, and he abandons his kid, and he can never forgive himself for it. But I'm like, you got to look inside that. Hey, kudos to him because he's talking about it. He's obviously dealing with the issue. Some people have, they get, many ways to sort of avoid what's in the back of your head. Alcohol, drugs, of course, but, overeating can do it. But really, probably the most common one, and it's really not even frowned upon, is overworking. So like a lot of overachievers are really dealing with trying to battle down stuff in the back of their head. They don't want it to percolate to the top. I'll just be so busy. I won't ever have to think about anything like that. So, that being said, what's this guy going to do with this emotion that's sitting raw in front of the two of us? And I'm really feeling his pain. I'm like, this is, not something I want to just have you wrap up and let's get back to work. So we're talking about it, and I thought they were thoughts that were worth sharing because everybody's got these things. But let's go back to my story. Or did I tell this story? No, I told him the story earlier today. The point of children as an example, because I like to look at myself when I'm thinking about something I might have done that I'm not too happy about. I like to look at myself as that little child, give myself a big hug and say, you know what, I see how that could happen. I'm good at it. I do it all the time, and I'm always canceling for myself. I'm canceling for other people who make mistakes, and I'm like, you know what? I get it. You had a tough day, and you were stressed thinking about 3 things at the same time, and you just scratched this car with a tool, and now I've got to spend, $500 repainting it, call the customer, bump the car another 2 days for extra work, and da-da-da-da-da, and that's a bad situation. Happened all the time at the shop. And you just can't get mad at somebody. They're already beating themselves up about it. So I just, I figure out in my head how it could happen. It happens. I've done it. Everybody's done it. But anyway, so I forgive myself for having done it. So I certainly can forgive this other guy for having done it. And I usually have to talk them off the cliff. They're like so upset. and I'm the one who has to pay and handle the whole problem. All they got to do is deal with the emotion of having scratched the car that's getting ready to be delivered that day. It's a terrible feeling. But anyway, back to the other example of children. Take a 3-year-old. 3-year-olds, like my little innocent, loving granddaughter, they do mean things. She grabs the hair of her younger sister and won't share things, and pushes, and all kinds of mean stuff. Very rarely, but it does happen. But some kids do it a lot more, and it's just the degree of how much frustration you're surrounded by. So if you're a kid and you're raised in a house that's got a lot of patience and a lot of love and a lot of nurturing and understanding, and you're free to explore that environment on your own, so you have a little bit of self-worth, and anyway, that's going to make for a happy, healthy kid who's probably going to be able to tolerate someone taking a toy from them, or somebody being mean to them, or somebody hitting them, or whatever, and they're not going to have to retaliate with biting. So take an example of somebody biting, and they're in school and they bite another kid, and now all the parents jump up. Oh my gosh, she got bit. And so let's just say, I'm a 3-year-old and I bite a girl in my class because she doesn't want to share, or she's got all the toys and I got nothing, and I've been frustrated all day. And maybe my mom was really stressed out and she dropped me off at school all wigged out, and I don't know what she was mad about or what was going on. But of course, if I see anger, as we all do, you see anger and frustration in someone else, you're going to think it has to do with me. It's human nature, and certainly what a kid's going to do. So anyway, so the kid's already dealing with all kinds of emotional baggage that they're totally unprepared for, and now they're having to deal with additional stress at school, and now they're dealing with additional stress of this kid taking a toy from them, and they lash out and bite back. So the point with that is that's a forgivable thing to us. We can say, oh yeah, come on, that's just what kids do, and given that scenario you just told us, I get it. But that's not what happens around her. There's no forgiveness and, oh, you poor thing who bit someone. That's what I would be. I see a child bite someone else, I know they're struggling. That's not a happy kid, and that would break my heart. The kid who got bit, they're hurt, but they are going to, grow from that. They don't have something in the back of their mind now that they've got to process and deal with. They got bit. So, they may be cautious of the anger energy of a young boy, but that's not a bad lesson to learn. So, but what about the boy who bit someone? The parents got called, the report had to be written up, the parents, the adults in the room, the teachers and the assistants, whatever, all had to get involved, and everybody's looking at him funny because the girl's crying, and and it's probably not the first time it's happened, so that's something that kid's going to have to process, and that could pile on top of some other event later in life and another event later in life, and no one's trying to fix this kid's unhappy little world, but they're certain to point out his failings and say, you're a biter, or you're a fighter now that you're older, or you're a kid who steals now that you're even older than that, or you're a person who, is always putting people down, or, all kinds of bad personality traits come out of a person who's not accepted or understood why they did something that was deemed bad by everyone around them, like abandoning your 11-year-old child as a father. No one's going to argue that that would seem to be a bad thing, but you got to come to some kind of realization, like we're doing now with this little kid, and say, you know what? Life piles on top of those incidents that you don't forgive yourself for. So whatever made you be a drug addict when you're in your 40s, obviously things have been piling up, and you were not a happy kid, not a happy adult, and you were doing that as a pain tolerance, self-prescribed medication, and it's not an easy one to regulate. And anyway, so down the sewer hole you go, into addiction and whacking out your life as a drug addict, and then what are you going to do to save yourself and everyone around you? Leave. Kick the woman out of the house with the kid, or whatever way it's going to happen. You got to get away. You got to get away from everything in life. You got to get away from your own subconscious, really, what you're trying to get away from. So I don't know if I have the answers in this video, and I don't want to be here all day talking to you, but I feel like it's such an important life lesson to be looking at the person who's the perpetrator of the bad as the person who needs the hugs. The kid at 10 years old, lots of 10-year-olds lose their dads. It's dad coming back in with baggage of feeling bad about abandoning the kid and all the other baggage that dad already has that made him into a drug addict to begin with, that he's not unpackaging, is what really is damaging to the kid. It's probably better off that the drug addict, even recovering drug addict dad, isn't in his life. But that isn't going to happen, and you got to work these things through. But what I would do if I was the drug addict dad is I would work on my own self-appreciation and self-love and self-acceptance and acceptance of the situations that you found yourself in. You can't change the past, but it doesn't mean that you want to just sort of put it in the closet and say, well, I can't change that, so that's bad and it's ugly, but I can't change it. No, you got to come to grips with it. You got to realize that there's something, there's a price you're paying for not coming to grips with it. And that's the complicated part that I guess is worth really emphasizing in this video, is it takes bandwidth out of your subconscious to, even out of your conscious mind, it takes bandwidth to suppress that stuff and to be processing it and to have all that negativity in the back of your head. That keeps you from being happy and being successful and being adventurous and being creative and being loving. And you can't love anyone else more than you love yourself. And you can't love yourself if you're deeming yourself a drug addict monster who you're kept in a cage and haven't done drugs in 10 years, but still processing whether you are going to go to hell for abandoning your son. That's not a healed person in any stretch, and not happy, not healthy, not a position I would want anyone to stay in. So I would really encourage everyone to take some time, slow down, look inside themselves, and find those little things that are irritating you about yourself. Or there's a lot of ways we could go in another video maybe about some of the pointers, but certainly if you've got frustration with anyone around you or any situation around you, then it's based on frustration with yourself, because they're totally intertwined. You can't give forgiveness and acceptance to anything around you if you can't give it to yourself. But anyway, we'll have to pick this up on another video. And I just really feel for people, though, that have big things in the back of their mind in their life that they can't forgive themselves for, because there's no moving on till you do. Anyway, good luck if you've got that, and let's talk. See ya.